Mia Porter adjusted her blazer and checked her reflection in the glass doors before stepping into the towering office building of Lux Industries. She had worked hard to get here her dream job, a position as executive assistant to the CEO. This was more than just a job. It was the chance to prove herself in a world that hadn't always been kind to her. Her polished appearance hid the nervousness she felt on the inside. Lux wasn't just any company. It was a titan of the tech world, and its CEO, Darren Gray, was as legendary as the company itself. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like an eternity. Mia stood in front of the mirror inside the elevator, adjusting her hair, then looking down at her notebook, her only source of comfort in an otherwise intimidating space. She had reviewed the company's history, Darren's success story, and his leadership style 1,000 times, but nothing could prepare her for actually meeting the man who had shaped the company into a billion-dollar empire. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Mia stepped out into the sleek, modern lobby. Every inch of the space screamed sophistication: glass walls, polished marble floors, and the quiet hum of productivity in the air. She took a deep breath and walked toward the receptionist, who greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome to Lux Industries. You must be Mia Porter," the receptionist said, her voice cheerful. "Mr. Gray is expecting you. Please, follow me." Mia nodded, swallowing her nerves as she followed the receptionist down the long corridor. They passed meeting rooms with glass walls, where teams of employees were discussing strategies, their voices hushed but filled with purpose. The world Mia had just entered felt so far removed from everything she had ever known. It wasn't just a company. It was a living, breathing force that dominated the industry. As they reached the office doors at the end of the hall, the receptionist stopped and turned to Mia with a kind smile. "Mr. Gray is just finishing up a call, but he'll be with you shortly. Please make yourself comfortable." The doors opened with a soft whoosh, revealing the inside of Darren Gray's office. It was everything Mia had expected: sleek, modern, minimalist. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and the light streaming in highlighted the polished desk where Darren sat, his back to her. He was tall, with broad shoulders, dressed in a sharp suit that seemed to mold to him perfectly. Darren Gray was exactly as she had imagined: powerful, commanding, and untouchable. Mia waited, trying to steady her breath as she noticed him glance over his shoulder at her, his sharp eyes piercing the silence. "Ms. Porter," he said, his voice low but authoritative. "I'm glad you could join me today." His eyes scanned her as he stood to greet her, and she instantly felt a wave of heat rush to her face. She offered a polite smile, doing her best to keep her composure. "Thank you for having me, Mr. Gray," she said, extending her hand for a handshake. Handshake was firm and warm, his grip leaving a slight tingle in her palm. She couldn't help but notice how calm and collected he seemed, even in the face of what had to be a whirlwind day of meetings. There was a confidence about him that she couldn't ignore. And then, as she tried to focus on the conversation, she realized the subtle force behind it. Darren Gray wasn't just a CEO. He was a man who exuded authority without ever raising his voice. "I've gone through your resume, Mia. You've done impressive work in your previous roles," Darren said, his voice smooth but direct. "I have high expectations for you here. Lux Industries isn't for the faint of heart. I need someone I can trust, someone who won't hesitate to make tough decisions. Can I count on you?" His gaze locked with hers, and for a moment Mia felt the weight of his words. This wasn't just about being an assistant. Darren wasn't asking if she could perform administrative tasks. He was asking if she could be part of his vision for Lux Industries, to be his trusted partner in navigating a corporate world that could destroy anyone who wasn't strong enough. "I can handle it," Mia said, meeting his gaze without flinching. Her voice steady and confident despite the flutter of nerves inside her. Darren didn't smile, but his eyes softened just slightly. "Good. I need someone who's not afraid to push boundaries. The stakes are high here, Mia, and if we're going to succeed, we have to be ready to take risks." The conversation turned to logistics and the details of her new role, coordinating schedules, handling sensitive information, assisting Darren with various business decisions. But as the meeting progressed, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a job. Darren Gray wasn't just a CEO, he was a force of nature, and now she was part of his world. As the meeting came to a close, Darren stood and walked toward the door, gesturing for Mia to follow. "You'll be handling a few key projects immediately. I'll trust you to get them off the ground, but be prepared for challenges. Lux doesn't wait for anyone." Mia nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and pressure. This was her chance, but it would take everything she had. She left his office with a new sense of purpose, but also a nagging curiosity about the man who had captivated her thoughts from the moment she stepped into his world. Darren Gray was untouchable, or so she thought. Cliffhanger, as Mia stepped out of the building, the cool breeze of the city hit her face. She couldn't help but feel the intensity of the job ahead. But there was something more, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed with a message from Darren. "See you in the meeting at 4. There's more at stake than you realize. Don't disappoint me." The next few days were a blur of activity. Mia Porter dove headfirst into her new role at Lux Industries, managing Darren's meetings, liaising with clients, and organizing documents for high-stakes projects. Every moment felt like a test of her capabilities, but she thrived under the pressure, impressing the team with her efficiency and sharp problem-solving skills. But despite the constant flow of work, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that there was something between her and Darren that neither of them had acknowledged. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. Mia had been working late, as usual. She was organizing Darren's calendar for the upcoming week when she received a text from him. "Meet me in my office in 10 minutes. Her pulse quickened, and she tried to brush off the wave of nerves that washed over her. It was nothing, she told herself, just another business matter. But as she walked toward Darren's office, her thoughts betrayed her. Why had he asked for her specifically? She couldn't help but feel the weight of his presence. Every time he called her in for something, he was always professional, always distant. But there was an intensity in his eyes whenever they spoke, a depth that unsettled her as she stepped into his office. Darren was standing by the window, gazing out over the city. His sharp profile caught the light, and for a moment, Mia was struck by the commanding presence he had. He was always the boss, always in control. "Mia, come in," he said, his voice calm but firm. He turned to face her, and his gaze lingered on her for a beat too long, like he was studying her. Double quotes. "Yes, Mr. Gray," she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral as she walked toward his desk. "I've been reviewing the numbers for the Triton project," he began, his voice steady, "and I need your help with something. I want you to prepare a presentation for the board next week. You'll be working with the senior team on this. You're the best at getting things done under pressure." Mia nodded, feeling the weight of the assignment. The Triton project was one of the biggest ventures Lux Industries was involved in. A presentation for the board meant the stakes were high. The pressure would be immense. But it was also an opportunity to prove herself. "I'll get started right away," she said, trying to sound as confident as she could. Darren stepped closer to her, his hand moving over the documents on the desk. He wasn't physically imposing, but there was something about him that made her feel smaller, more aware of her own presence. "Good. I know you'll do a great job," he said softly. "I've been impressed with how quickly you've adapted. To the team, Mia, you've got a sharp mind and a strong work ethic. That's why I trust you with this." Mia's heart skipped a beat at the praise, but she quickly pushed it aside. She couldn't afford to get distracted. The job had to come first. "Thank you," she said, glancing at the documents on the desk. She could feel the tension between them, the electricity in the air that was hard to ignore. Darren seemed to sense it too, his expression softening just slightly. But then he quickly cleared his throat, as if to reset the mood. "You're dismissed for now," he said, his voice taking on a more professional tone. "Get the presentation to me by the end of the week. I'll need to review it before we present it to the board." As Mia left the office, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between her and Darren. Their professional relationship was clear, but there were moments, fleeting but undeniable, where their interactions felt personal, as though there was something more brewing beneath the surface. That evening, as she worked late on the presentation, Mia couldn't help but think about Darren's words. He trusted her. The trust wasn't something she took lightly, but the more she worked with him, the more she felt drawn to him, just as a boss, but as a man. The way he looked at her, the way he spoke to her, it all felt different from the way he interacted with the others. The next few days passed in a blur. Mia spent every waking moment working on the Triton project, determined to prove herself to Darren. She worked late into the night, often finding herself alone in the office, her thoughts drifting back to him. Every time she passed his office, she felt a strange pull, a desire to be near him, to understand the mystery that surrounded him. But it was all complicated by the walls they had built around themselves. Darren Gray was her boss, and no matter how much the attraction grew, she knew that pursuing it could cost her everything. The day before the presentation, Mia was in the office late, making final tweaks to the slides, when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Darren. "Meet me in my office in 30 minutes. I want to go over the presentation before tomorrow's board meeting." Mia's stomach flipped. She knew this would be the moment of truth. She had worked hard, but there was still a nagging feeling that Darren's approval was something she could never fully earn. He was always a step ahead of her, always the one in control. She gathered her things and walked toward his office, each step heavier than the last. The air between them had shifted again, and she wasn't sure if it was the pressure of the work or something more. When she entered his office, Darren was sitting behind his desk, his usual calm demeanor present, but there was something different in his gaze. He looked at her as she walked in, his eyes darkening for a split second before he gave her a nod. "Come in, Mia. Sit down," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. She took a seat, setting the files in front of her. As they discussed the presentation, Darren's focus was intense. He asked insightful questions, pushing her to think harder about the project. But as the conversation continued, Mia began to feel the weight of his gaze, the intensity of his presence overwhelming. After a few minutes, Darren leaned back in his chair, his eyes still fixed on her. He reached forward, his hand brushing against hers in a brief, accidental touch. The contact sent a jolt through Mia, her heart racing faster than she could process. "Mia, you're doing great," Darren said softly, his voice low. I'm proud of the work you've put in. I know you're capable of so much more. But you've got to trust me when I say, you're going places here, with or without me. The words hit her harder than expected. Was he complimenting her? Or was he warning her? She didn't know. But she couldn't deny the heat building between them. The undeniable tension that neither of them seemed willing to address. I'll give you the final version by morning, she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside. She stood up, ready to leave, but Darren stopped her with a look. Mia, don't let this be just about the work, he said, his voice low but urgent. There's more here, and you know it. The days after the presentation were a whirlwind. The board meeting went off without a hitch, and Mia's presentation was praised by the higher-ups. Lux Industries was on the brink of securing a multi-billion-dollar deal, and the company was buzzing with excitement. But while the success of the project was a victory for Mia, her personal life seemed to spiral further out of control. Darren had been uncharacteristically quiet after the meeting, and Mia couldn't help but notice how distant he had become. It was like he was shutting her out. Maybe it was because of the tension that had been building between them, or perhaps it was the pressure of the project. Either way, Mia couldn't ignore the strange pull between them. One moment they were connected, the next he was as cold as ice. It all came to a head one evening when Mia was in the office alone, putting together reports for an upcoming meeting. She'd stayed late, determined to finish everything before Darren arrived the next morning. Her phone buzzed on the desk, another message from him. Meet me at 8 p.m. in the lounge. I need to talk to you. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't the usual work-related message. She had been feeling the strain between them for days, but now it seemed like Darren wanted to address it. The question was, did she really want to know the truth? At 8 p.m., Mia walked into the private lounge on the top floor of Lux Industries. The mood was set with dim lighting and an air of quiet elegance. Darren was already there, sitting at the bar, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up as she entered, his gaze soft but guarded. Mia, he said, his voice low, thanks for coming. She stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do, before walking over to the bar and sitting beside him. What's this about, Darren? She asked, her tone steady despite the nervousness bubbling beneath her calm exterior. You asked me to meet you here. You've been distant for days. Darren swirled his drink in his glass, his eyes never leaving hers. I need to be honest with you about something, Mia, he said, his voice steady but carrying a weight that felt heavier than usual. The way I've been acting, it's not because of the project. It's because of you. Sophia felt her breath catch in her throat. The words she had been afraid of hearing had finally come. Darren wasn't the type to beat around the bush. If he was, saying it out loud now, then there was no turning back. Whatever this was between them, it was about to come to a head. I don't understand, Mia said quietly, her eyes searching his. You've been so professional, so distant. What do you mean, it's about me? Darren leaned forward slightly, his voice low and almost hesitant. I can't ignore it anymore, Mia. This connection between us, it's real, but I can't have this. I can't let it get in the way of what we're both trying to achieve. Here, Mia felt her stomach churn. She had thought about this moment so many times in the past few days. But hearing him say it out loud, hearing him acknowledge the attraction between them, was something entirely different. So what? You're telling me that this is just going to end? She asked, trying to keep the frustration out of her voice. Eyes flickered with something guilt, perhaps I'm telling you that I can't let this thing between us jeopardize everything we've worked for. Lux Industries is everything to me, Mia. I can't afford to lose focus. And if we let this continue, it will tear us both apart. Mia's heart raced, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the bar. It was like a door she had been afraid to open had just been slammed shut in front of her. But Darren's words hit her like a punch to the gut. He was telling her that he cared about Lux Industries more than he cared about her. That's what this was about, wasn't it? His empire. The thing he had spent years building, and here, she was caught in the middle. I don't get it, Mia said, her voice breaking. I thought we were more than this. I thought we meant something to each other. Darren closed his eyes for a brief moment, and when he opened them again, there was a new look of determination. Mia, I do care about you, but right now, I can't. I can't afford to let this get in the way of what I've worked so hard for. I can't risk it. And you can't either. You need to decide what's more important, your career or this. Mia was silent for a long time, the weight of his words sinking in. She had been so focused on trying to prove herself in this world of business that she hadn't allowed herself to truly think about what Darren meant to her. She had always pushed him away in her mind, telling herself that she had to focus on her job, on her goals. But now, standing here in front of him, she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. I can't choose, Darren, Mia said finally, her voice steady, though the pain behind her words was palpable. I can't choose between you and my career, but I won't be your second choice either. I won't be something you keep on the side while you chase your empire. Darren's expression softened, and for a moment, the coldness between them seemed to disappear. I never wanted to make you feel like that, Mia, he said quietly, regret lacing his voice. But I don't know how else to do this. You deserve more than I can give you right now. Mia stood up, her decision made. She had spent too much time chasing after something she wasn't sure she would ever truly have. She had always known that Darren Gray was a man of ambition and power, but she never thought that would come at the cost of her own happiness. You're right, Mia said softly. You can't give me what I need, and I can't keep fighting for something that doesn't exist. I'm done, Darren. With that, she turned and walked out of the lounge, leaving Darren standing there, her words hanging in the air between them. The days following Mia's departure from Darren's world were the hardest of her life. She had walked away from a man she once thought she could never live without. She had left the connection they shared, one that was built on trust, ambition, and perhaps something more. But as the dust settled, Mia realized that walking away from Darren was not the end. It was the beginning of something else. Mia threw herself into work with a renewed determination. The projects she had been leading at Lux Industries were moving forward, and despite the personal turmoil she was experiencing, she knew she had to keep her head in the game. Her performance had been stellar, and she had a reputation for being one of the most reliable and efficient members of the team. But even the most focused mind couldn't escape the pull of emotions. Every time she passed Darren's office, every time she saw the news about Lux Industries' growth, she felt the familiar sting of regret. Had she made the right choice? Or had she abandoned the one chance at love she would ever get? It was late one evening, nearly a week after their final conversation, when Mia's phone buzzed. Her stomach churned as she saw the name on the screen, Darren Gray. She hesitated. The last thing she wanted to do was reopen the wound, but she couldn't ignore the call. She answered it, her voice steady despite the surge of emotions within. Mia, I need to speak with you. Darren's voice came through, calm but urgent. Please meet me at the office. It's important. Mia bit her lip. She didn't want to go, but part of her, the part that still cared for him, couldn't turn him down. She agreed to meet him, not knowing what this conversation would bring. An hour later, Mia entered the Lux Industries building. The lights in the lobby were dim, the city below twinkling like a faraway dream. She walked through the halls, her heels clicking on the polished floors, her thoughts racing. She had no idea what Darren wanted to say, but she couldn't help the gnawing feeling in her gut. When she reached Darren's office, she paused outside the door, her heart beating in her chest. She took a deep breath before pushing the door open. Inside, Darren was standing by the window, his back to her. He turned around as she entered, his eyes tired but focused. His usual air of confidence was gone. There was something raw about him. Now a vulnerability that Mia had never seen before. Mia, Darren said softly, his voice carrying an emotion she hadn't expected. I've been thinking about what you said, and I understand now. I can't keep pretending that what happened between us doesn't matter. It does. You matter. I can't lose you, Mia. Mia's heart fluttered at his words, but she held herself steady. You don't get it, Darren. I can't keep being part of this world if it means sacrificing everything I've worked for. I had to walk away. I had to take control of my own life, my own career. Darren moved closer, his expression pleading. I know, but I made a mistake. Mia, I was so focused on my empire that I didn't see the one thing that mattered most. You. I let my ambition blind me. Mia's emotions were a whirlwind. She had spent the last few days questioning her decision. Could she really walk away from everything they had? Could she really live without Darren in her life? His words touched something deep inside her, but there was also a part of her that couldn't forget how he had hurt her, how he had let his career come first while leaving her to pick up the pieces. I don't know if I can trust you again, Darren, she said quietly. You said I wasn't a priority. You chose your empire over me, and now you're telling me you want me back. But how can I believe you? Darren closed his eyes, his hand gripping the back of the chair in frustration. I can't change the past, Mia. I can't take back the mistakes I made. But I can tell you this. I'm ready to fight for us, if you'll let me. I'll prove to you that I can be the man you need me to be. Mia felt a lump form in her throat. Part of her wanted to give in. Part of her wanted to believe him. But the other part, the stronger part, knew that she couldn't afford to be the woman who waited for someone to change. She had to be strong for herself. She had to trust that walking away was the right choice, even if it hurt. I can't go back, Darren, Mia said, her voice steady. We're both changed. I'm changed. I need to keep moving forward, with or without you. I can't let you be the reason I lose myself again. Darren's face softened, the pain in his eyes clear. I understand, he said quietly. I never wanted to hold you back. I never realized how much I needed you until you were gone. Mia stood there, staring at him, the ache in her heart deepening. She wanted to say something, anything that would make everything easier. But the truth was, she couldn't. She couldn't go back to what they were. Not now, not when she had finally found her own strength. Darren stepped back, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I won't stop fighting for you, Mia. But if you want to walk away, I'll respect that. I won't ask you to stay if it means compromising your happiness. Mia took a deep breath, her heart breaking at the sight of him, but she knew this was the only way. She had to be strong for herself, even if it meant letting go of the man she still loved. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Darren," she said softly. "But I have to find my own way now." Weeks had passed since that night in Darren's office. Mia had thrown herself into her work at Lux Industries, determined to prove that she could succeed without him. She had kept her distance, focusing on her career, ignoring the constant pull of emotions that lingered in her heart. But no matter how much she buried herself in the grind of business, there was always a part of her that missed him, his voice, his presence, the way he made her feel like she could conquer the world. Yet, as time went on, Mia realized that it wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about her own self-worth, about learning to stand on her own 2 feet, and not letting the past define her. The day started like any other, with Mia walking into the office early, ready to take on another round of meetings. She had been promoted to project manager, a position that allowed her more authority and responsibility. Lux Industries was growing, and with it, her influence within the company. But even as she achieved new heights, her thoughts kept drifting, back to Darren, to what they had shared, and to the painful decision she had made as she sat at her desk. Reviewing documents for the new project she was leading, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number, and she hesitated before opening it. But the words that appeared on her screen froze her in place. "Mia, I need to see you. I know you're busy, but this can't wait. Meet me at the rooftop garden in 30 minutes. Darren, her heart skipped a beat. It had been weeks since they had last spoken, and she had been doing everything in her power to avoid him. But there was something in his message, something desperate, that made her wonder what he wanted now. 30 minutes later, Mia stood in the rooftop garden, the city stretching out before her like a vast ocean. The view was breathtaking, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She could feel her pulse quicken as she saw Darren standing by the railing, looking out at the skyline. He didn't turn around as she approached, but she could feel his presence, that same intensity that had always drawn her in. Mia took a deep breath, trying to steady herself before speaking. "You wanted to see me?" she asked, her voice steady but with a hint of apprehension. Darren finally turned to face her, and for the first time in weeks, Mia saw something vulnerable. In his eyes, something that wasn't masked by the usual walls he put up. "Mia, I know I've messed up," he began, his voice quieter than usual. "I've been thinking about everything about us, and I know I've hurt you. But I can't just sit back and let you walk away without trying to make things right." Mia's heart ached at his words, but she quickly pushed the emotion aside. "I've already made my decision, Darren. I can't go back. I can't be part of this world with you. I have to move on." Darren stepped closer, his voice full of urgency. "I'm not asking you to go back to what we had, Mia. I'm asking you to give us another chance. We can find a way to make this work, but only if you let me in. I've realized that no matter how hard I work, no matter how successful looks becomes, it won't mean anything if I don't have you by my side." Mia felt a lump form in her throat. How could she resist him? His words cut through her like a blade. She had tried so hard to move on, to tell herself that this was for the best, but here he was, offering her everything again. The love, the ambition, the power, they were all there. The choice had never felt so difficult. "Darren, this isn't about us anymore. It's about me." Mia's voice cracked, but she quickly composed herself. "I need to prove that I can be successful without depending on you, without depending on anyone." Darren reached for her hand, his touch sending a shockwave through her. "Mia, I know you're strong. I never doubted that. But you don't have to do this alone. I want to be there with you, not as your CEO, but as your partner." Mia stood, frozen, her mind racing. She had always known Darren was powerful, but she hadn't expected him to be so vulnerable, so open. She wanted to believe him, to believe that they could start fresh. But the fear of losing herself again, the fear of falling back into the same pattern, held her back. "I can't just be your partner in this world," she said quietly. "I have to be my own person. I need to be independent. I need to know that I can stand on my own without anyone pulling me back." Darren looked at her, his expression softening, the fire in his eyes dimming just a little. He let go of her hand and stepped back. "I understand," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I never wanted to hold you back, Mia. I just... I never realized how much I needed you until it was almost too late." Mia felt tears sting her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "I need to move on, Darren. We both do. I can't keep living in the past, wondering what might have been." Darren nodded, his expression resigned. "I won't stop fighting for you, Mia. I never will, but I'll respect your decision. If this is what you need, then I'll let you go." Mia swallowed, the lump in her throat, her heart aching at the thought of leaving him behind. But she knew it was the right choice. She had to find her own path. She had to prove to herself that she was more than just a reflection of someone else's success. "Goodbye, Darren," she said, her voice steady, though the pain in her heart was almost unbearable. As she turned to walk away, she heard Darren's voice behind her, softer now, filled with an emotion she could hardly describe. "I'll always love you, Mia." She didn't turn back. Instead, she walked forward, knowing that the future was hers to create, with or without him. Mia Porter had risen quickly through the ranks at Lux Industries, her work ethic and determination carving a clear path toward the top. The days following her decision to walk away from Darren had been the hardest of her life, but also the most empowering. She had found her own rhythm, her own place within the company, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly in control of her own future. But as the weeks passed, the weight of the past still lingered. Darren was never far from her mind. No matter how hard she worked, no matter how many accolades she received, there was always the hollow feeling of what could have been between them. Darren had left a mark on her that no amount of professional success could fill. It was late on a Thursday night, and Mia was sitting at her desk in her corner office, reviewing the details for the Triton project's expansion. The company was pushing forward with groundbreaking initiatives, and Mia was leading the charge. She had become a trusted leader within Lux, and her colleagues had begun to respect her not just as a manager, but as someone who could drive the company's vision forward. But as the hours ticked by, Mia felt the weight of exhaustion begin to creep in. She hadn't had a real break in weeks. She'd kept herself so busy, so focused on the future, that she had barely had time to think about what she really wanted from her life anymore. And that's when it happened. Message from Darren. The screen on her phone lit up, displaying his name. Her heart skipped a beat, and her fingers hesitated for a moment before she opened the message. "Mia, I need to see you. There's something I need to tell you." The message was brief, but the urgency in his words left her breathless. Mia stared at the screen, her mind racing. Why now? After everything that had happened, why was he reaching out to her again? She had to make a choice. She could ignore the message, continue pushing forward with her career, and keep her distance from the past. Or she could go to him, listen to what he had to say, and face the feelings she had tried so hard to suppress. Mia took a deep breath and made her decision. She would go. 30 minutes later, she arrived at Lux Industries, the building still lit up against the darkening sky. The silence of the late hour only heightened the tension she felt as she entered the lobby and headed toward Darren's office. The door was slightly ajar, and she could see his silhouette inside. He wasn't working, he was waiting. Mia knocked softly, and when Darren looked up, his face softened. His usual confidence was still there, but there was something more in his eyes now, something that made him look vulnerable. "Mia," Darren said, standing to greet her. "I'm glad you came." Mia nodded, walking into the office. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, but she refused to let it affect her. She had come here for answers, not to fall back into old patterns. "You wanted to talk?" Mia asked, trying to sound calm. "What's so urgent?" Darren stepped closer, his expression serious. "I know I hurt you, Mia, and I know I've asked too much of you already, but I need to tell you something important. I didn't just lose you, I lost everything. Lux Industries has become my life, but it's come at a cost. I've been so focused on my career, on the company, that I've neglected what really matters. And what matters, Mia, is you." Mia's heart clenched at his words, but she forced herself to stay composed. "Darren, I walked away because I needed to find myself. I needed to find my own path, independent of you and the company. I can't go back to what we had. I won't." Darren's face fell, but he didn't back away. "I know, but I had to. Try. I can't keep living like this, Mia. I've built this empire, but it feels empty without you. I was wrong to let my work define me, and I was wrong to let you slip away without a fight." Mia felt torn. She had spent so long convincing herself that she was better off without him, that her career was the only thing she needed to focus on. But the truth was, Darren still mattered to her. She had never stopped loving him, despite everything that had happened between them. And yet, she couldn't allow herself to fall back into the same trap. She couldn't lose herself again. "Darren, I don't know what you expect from me," she said, her voice wavering for the first time. "I've made my choice. I have my own career, my own life. I can't just walk away from everything I've worked for." Darren stepped closer, his voice desperate. "I'm not asking you to choose between me and your career, Mia. I'm asking you to let me in again. We can build this together. I can be there for you. I can support you, but only if you let me. I know we can make this work if we work together." Mia's heart raced, torn between her love for him and the life she had built for herself. She couldn't deny that Darren was right about one thing: they had a chance to build something great together. But the cost of that would be high. She had worked so hard to prove herself, to build a future that didn't rely on anyone else. She couldn't throw that away for a man who had once chosen his empire over her. "I don't know if I can trust you again," Mia said softly, her voice almost breaking. "I don't know if I can let you back in." Darren reached for her hand, his grip gentle but firm. "I know it will take time, but I'll wait, Mia. I'll wait for as long as it takes. But I need you to know I'm not asking for everything right away. I just need you to know that I'm here, and I want to build a future with you together. No more distractions. No more mistakes." Mia looked at him, her chest tight. She had fought so hard to get where she was. But in Darren's eyes, she saw sincerity, and for the first time, She wondered if there was still a chance for them. Maybe not right away, maybe not tomorrow, but perhaps someday. I need time, Mia said softly, but I'm not saying no, I'm just not ready to say yes yet. It had been 3 weeks since Mia and Darren's conversation on the rooftop garden. 3 weeks of uncertainty, of pushing through the days without truly knowing what the future held. Mia had thrown herself back into her work, keeping herself busy with new projects and meeting deadlines. But despite her best efforts to move forward, she couldn't escape the gnawing feeling that something was still unresolved. Mia was in her office one afternoon, reviewing a final draft for a new proposal that could take Lux Industries to the next level. Her career was moving faster than she had ever expected, and she had earned the respect of her colleagues. She was a force to be reckoned with, and she felt proud of how far she had come. But as she flipped through the pages, her thoughts kept drifting back to Darren, even though she had told him she needed time. Even though she had insisted on keeping her distance, her heart couldn't forget him. His words had been honest. He had made mistakes, but he was still offering her a chance to build something together. Mia didn't know if she was ready for that, but she knew she couldn't keep running from him forever. That evening, as Mia was finishing up her work for the day, her phone buzzed. It was from Darren, double quotes, "Mia, can we talk? I've been thinking a lot about us, and I think it's time we take the next step. Can you meet me at 8 p.m. in the lounge? I need you to hear me out." Mia stared at the screen for a long moment. He was reaching out again. He was ready to take the next step. But was she? She had spent the last few weeks wrestling with her feelings, but this time she knew it was time to face him. No more hiding. No more pretending she didn't care. The choice she had been avoiding would have to be made now. At 8 p.m., Mia arrived. At the lounge on the top floor of Lux Industries. The city skyline shimmered outside, the lights reflecting off the glass walls. She stepped inside and saw Darren already seated at the bar, his usual air of confidence replaced by something softer, something that made Mia's heart race. He stood when she walked in, and for the first time in weeks, she saw a genuine smile on his face. It wasn't the cold, calculating smile of the CEO, it was the smile of the man who had finally realized what he wanted. "Mia," Darren said, his voice warm and inviting. "I'm glad you came. I've been thinking a lot about what we've been through, and I think I've finally figured it out." Mia felt a flutter in her chest, but she stayed calm, her gaze steady. "What do you mean, Darren?" Darren took a deep breath, his hands gripping the edge of the bar. "I was wrong to let work consume me. I was so focused on building this company that I lost sight of what really mattered. You, I've realized. That I don't just want to lead Lux. I want to lead it with you by my side. I want to be the man you deserve, not just a CEO, but a partner. I want to give us a real chance, Mia." Mia felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of relief and confusion. The words she had longed to hear were finally here. But now that they were out in the open, she wasn't sure how to respond. Could she trust him again? Could she really believe that things had changed? "I've always believed in you, Darren," Mia said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't know if I can just go back to how things were. I can't lose myself again, not for anyone." Darren stepped closer, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I'm not asking you to lose yourself. I'm asking you to trust me. Trust that we can have a future together, both in business and in life. I'm not asking you to abandon your dreams. I want us to build our dreams together." Mia's heart raced, but this time she didn't feel the fear she had felt before. There was still hesitation, of course, but there was something different in Darren's eyes, something that told her he was ready to fight for them, ready to make sacrifices for the relationship they both wanted. I don't know if I can just forget the past, Mia admitted. I don't know if I can forgive everything that happened between us. Darren reached out, gently taking her hand in his. You don't have to forget, Mia. You don't have to forgive all at once. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to make it right. To show you that I can be the man you need, not just the man who built this company. Mia looked down at their hands, her heart torn between the life she had built on her own and the life she could have with Darren. The past had been full of pain and mistakes, but she couldn't ignore the truth anymore. She still loved him, despite everything, despite the years of sacrifice and distance. The connection they shared was undeniable. Okay, Mia said, her voice barely audible. I'll give you a chance. Not because I think we can fix everything overnight, but because I want to see if we can build something new, together. Darren's face softened, and for the first time in a long while, Mia saw the man she had fallen in love with. Not the CEO, not the billionaire who controlled everything, but the man who was willing to make things right. Thank you, Mia, Darren said, his voice thick with emotion. You won't regret this. I'll make sure of it. The weeks after Mia and Darren decided to give their relationship another chance were a delicate balancing act. Mia had made it clear that she couldn't just throw herself into their relationship without maintaining her independence. Darren, understanding the cost of his past mistakes, respected her boundaries, but was equally determined to prove that they could have both a thriving company and a fulfilling love at work. Mia's career had never been better. She was leading a critical project for Lux Industries, and her hard work was being recognized at every level. Her colleagues looked at her with new respect, and she was no longer just the assistant to the CEO. She was a force in her own right. However, the pressure to perform at such a high level came with a price. One morning, Mia arrived at the office early to go over the latest market projections for the Triton project, which would determine the future of Lux's expansion into new markets. The meeting with the board was in 2 days, and there was no room for error. She had been working non-stop for the past week, and her exhaustion was beginning to show. As Mia sat in the meeting room, surrounded by charts, reports, and presentations, she glanced at her phone. It was a text from Darren. We need to talk about the Triton presentation later today. I'll meet you in my office at noon. Her stomach twisted at the thought of facing Darren again. The push-pull between their personal and professional lives still existed, but they had agreed to keep things separate at least for the time being. Mia had promised herself she would maintain her professionalism, but with Darren, it was never that simple. Noon came quickly, and Mia found herself walking down the long hallway to Darren's office. She had tried to push the thoughts of their relationship to the back of her mind, but it was becoming harder with every passing day. She had told herself that this was just business, that their personal issues would not affect their work. But as she stepped into his office and saw his intense gaze, she couldn't shake the feeling that the balance between the two was becoming fragile. Mia, come in, Darren said, his voice as calm as ever. But there was something in his eyes, something that hinted at the deeper conversation that was about to unfold. Mia walked into the office and closed the door behind her. She sat across from Darren, placing her notes on the desk between them. You wanted to discuss the Triton presentation? She asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. Yes, Darren replied, leaning forward slightly, his expression serious. But we need to address something else first. I know we've agreed to keep business and personal separate, but I don't think we can continue to ignore the fact that it's affecting everything. Us, looks, the way we're working together. Mia's heart skipped a beat. She had hoped this conversation wouldn't come so soon, but she could see it in Darren's eyes, the urgency, the unspoken tension. Darren, we agreed to give this a chance, but ... Mia started, but Darren interrupted her. I know, he said quickly. But it's not just about us anymore, Mia. We're building something big here. And if we're going to do that, we have to be honest about what's at stake. Mia took a deep breath, her mind racing. This was what she had been afraid of, the pressure of balancing love and power. Darren's words made it clear that their relationship wasn't just a personal matter anymore. It was intertwined with their work, their company, their future. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your career, Mia, Darren said, his voice softening. But we can't pretend that everything is just business anymore. If we're going to keep this going, we have to figure out how to navigate the power dynamics, how to make it work without it destroying everything we've worked for. Mia's hands tightened on the edge of her chair. She had tried to ignore the tension, but now it was impossible to avoid. Her feelings for Darren had never been a simple matter, and as much as she tried to convince herself that she could focus on her work and leave their personal issues aside, she realized how much he had become a part of her world in ways she wasn't ready for. You're right, Mia said quietly, looking down at her hands. But I don't know how to do this. I can't lose myself again, Darren. I can't lose my independence. Darren reached across the desk and gently touched her hand, his fingers warm against hers. You won't, I promise, Mia. I won't let you. Mia looked up at him, her heart torn between the man she loved and the career she had worked so hard to build. Could she have both? Could she trust Darren to not let their relationship interfere with everything she had fought for? For a moment, there was silence between them, heavy and thick. Darren's eyes searched hers, as though trying to read her thoughts, trying to see if she was ready to make the leap with him. I don't know, Darren, Mia whispered, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I don't know if I can ever fully let you in, not in the way you want. Darren's expression softened, and he let go of her hand, pulling back slightly. I understand, he said quietly, but I need you to know something, Mia. He paused, gathering his thoughts before speaking again. No matter what happens, I'll always support you. Even if we don't end up together, I will always believe in you. You're the future of this company. Mia's breath caught. She had known Darren to be driven, determined, and ruthless in the boardroom. But hearing him say that, hearing him believe in her vision, more than in his own, touched something deep inside her. She had spent so long questioning whether she could ever have it all, whether she could be herself while sharing her life with someone like Darren. And for the first time, she felt like there was a way. I don't know if I'm ready, Darren, Mia said, her voice trembling slightly. But I can't keep pretending I don't care about you. And I can't pretend this doesn't matter. Darren stood up and walked around the desk, coming to stand next to her. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. We'll take it one step at a time, together. Mia sat in her office late one evening, staring at the contracts and proposals in front of her. The deal for Lux Industries' expansion into new markets was almost finalized, but she felt more uncertain than ever. Darren had been the driving force behind the company's success, but Mia had taken the reins in his absence, proving herself as a leader in her own right. The stakes were higher than ever, and Lux's future was in her hands. But her personal life was also in turmoil, and she knew that the time had come to make a choice. For weeks, Mia and Darren had been trying to balance their relationship with their professional lives. They had both made compromises. Darren had learned to give her space, and Mia had opened up to him in ways she never thought possible. But as the deal with Triton Industries neared completion, Mia began to feel the immense pressure of juggling her responsibilities. The truth was clear. If they continued down this path, their personal relationship would be in constant conflict with their ambitions, and the risk of losing both the company and each other was too great. One night, as Mia reviewed the final numbers, the door to her office opened. Darren stood there, his expression unreadable. There was no more tension between them, no more unspoken words, just the quiet understanding that they were at a crossroads. "You've been working non-stop," he said, walking in and sitting across from her. "I know the deal is important, Mia, but so is us. You've been keeping your distance, and I think we both know why." Mia felt her heart race, but she steadied herself. "I'm not keeping my distance, Darren. I'm doing what's necessary. Lux is at a critical juncture. I can't afford to get distracted." Darren looked at her, his expression softening. "You're right, Lux is everything. But so are you, Mia. I've spent my whole life building an empire. But I've realized something I should have known all along. No matter how big this company gets, I can't do it without you." Mia felt a rush of emotions flood through her. She had spent so long believing that career success was the only thing that defined her. But now, standing here with Darren, she realized that maybe she could have both. Maybe they could have both. "We can have both, Mia, but only if we do this together," Darren continued. "But if you can't make that choice, if you can't take the leap with me, I'll respect it. But know this: I'm ready to fight for you, for us, if you're ready." Mia's heart ached as she stared at him. She had always known Darren's ambition, but she hadn't expected him to be so willing to sacrifice it all for their future. The choice seemed so simple now, yet it was still so complicated. "I've always wanted to be more than just your assistant, Darren," Mia said softly, her voice breaking slightly. "I wanted to prove that I could do this on my own, that I could build something without relying on anyone else." Darren reached out, taking her hand in his. "And you have, Mia. You've built Lux up in ways I never could have done without you, but now I'm asking you to build this future with me, together, not as my assistant, but as my equal." Mia stood, torn between her love for him and the independence she had fought for. The battle between love and ambition had been raging in her heart since the day they had first met. She had always believed that success came at a price, but now she realized that success, love, and happiness didn't have to be mutually exclusive. Could she have it all? Could she have Lux, her career, and Darren without sacrificing herself in the process? Mia didn't have the answers yet, but she knew this was the moment where everything would change. Darren stood up, his gaze steady on hers. "Whatever you decide, Mia, I'll support you, but don't walk away from us, from what we can have together. This company, our future, everything we've worked for, it's all worth it, if you're by my side." The city of Los Angeles stretched out before Mia, its skyline shimmering beneath the setting sun. From her office, she had a perfect view of the bustling metropolis, a symbol of everything she had achieved and everything still ahead of her. Yet, despite the success, the accolades, and the recognition, one thing weighed heavily on her mind. Darren, the decision she had been avoiding, the choice that would change the course of her life, was now impossible to ignore. She had promised herself that she would remain strong, that she would stay independent, and that her career would come first. But now, after everything they had been through, she realized that she couldn't just keep pushing him away. It had been a week since their conversation on the rooftop garden, and Mia had spent every waking moment trying to come to terms with what Darren had said. She had been torn between two worlds, the woman who wanted to prove she could do it all on her own, and the woman who still loved a man who had once been her everything. Darren had given her the space she needed. He had respected her decision to focus on her career, but deep down, Mia knew that the love between them wasn't something she could just ignore forever. It was time to face the truth. As Mia walked into her office that afternoon, she saw a message on her phone from Darren. "Mia, can we meet? I think it's time to decide what comes next for us." Her heart skipped a beat, but she was no longer afraid. She had made her decision. She was ready to confront the reality of what they could be. They could build this future together at 7 p.m. Mia met Darren at their favorite cafe, the one they had visited so many times before everything became so complicated. The ambience was warm and quiet, and as soon as Mia walked in, she spotted Darren sitting by the window, his eyes fixed on the door. He looked up as she approached, a slight smile forming on his lips. "Mia," he said softly, standing up to greet her. "I'm glad you came." Mia sat down across from him, her heart pounding. There was something different about tonight. Maybe it was the serenity in the air, or maybe it was the certainty in her own heart, but she knew this was the moment that would determine everything. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation," Darren began, his voice steady, "about the company, about us. And I've realized something, Mia." Mia looked at him, her expression softening. "What have you realized?" Darren took a deep breath before speaking. "I realized that I can't do this without you. I can't keep building this empire if you're not by my side. But I also know that I can't keep you in my life if I'm just the CEO. You deserve more than that. You deserve me, all of me." Mia felt the weight of his words, but she also knew that she had to make the final decision. It wasn't just about Darren, it was about her. She had fought so hard to get to this point, to prove that she could stand on her own. But she also knew that love didn't have to be a hindrance to her success. It could be a strength, a source of support. "I've thought about this a lot, Darren," Mia said, her voice shaking with emotion, "and I realized something too. I want us to build this future together. I don't want to lose you, not again. But I also need you to understand that I can't be the woman I used to be. I can't lose myself in this. I have to keep my independence." Darren smiled, his eyes filled with relief. "I understand, Mia. We'll do this together. We'll build looks, and we'll build our future on our own terms." Mia felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She had made the choice, and for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace with it. She wasn't sacrificing her career or her dreams. She wasn't losing herself. She was choosing to grow, to evolve, and to share that growth with someone who had been there from the beginning. Someone who understood her. "Then let's do this, Darren," Mia said, her voice steady now. "Let's build this together. For us." They leaned in, their eyes meeting, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade away. All that mattered was the connection between them, the understanding that they had found their way back to each other. Mia had found the balance she had been searching for. She had found herself, and in Darren, she had found the support she needed to reach even greater heights. As they sat there, in the warm glow of the cafe, Mia realized that this was only the beginning. The future was theirs to shape, and it wouldn't be easy. But with Darren by her side, she knew that they could achieve anything they set their minds to.